A strong safety culture is the most critical aspect of an effective safety management system. Without it, the foundational pillars of the safety management system, safety policy, risk management, safety assurance, and safety promotion, lose impact, no matter how well-designed technology platforms or administrative processes may be. A solid SMS is more than just policies and procedures. It is a mindset embedded in every level of the organization. A successful safety culture is built and sustained through 5 essential conditions that serve as the backbone of commitment to safety, ensuring that every decision and action aligns with core safety values. Condition 1. Safety advocacy. Every high-functioning SMS must have safety advocacy, promoted by a safety advocate whose voice, decisions, and example relay to the rest of the organization what actually matters. That voice does specific things. It speaks up in the room where decisions get made. It calls out unsafe behavior when others stay quiet. It argues for safety resources when budget conversations get heated. It acknowledges when standards are being upheld, and it corrects when they're not. Publicly, consistently, and without exception. Consistency is what makes it a voice worth following. When people see the same standard applied every time, they start to believe the standard is real. And when they believe it's real, they hold it themselves. A workforce can see it when a mechanic writes up a squawk that grounds an aircraft and leadership backs the call. When a crew member raises a concern and gets a real response instead of pressure to move on. Those signals tell the workforce everything they need to know about what safety actually means in their organization. A safety advocate isn't a title on a company's org chart. It is a role that gets demonstrated every day through real decisions, especially the ones made under pressure when schedule and safety are pulling in opposite directions. In an ideal world, the safety advocate is the top leadership in an organization. The CEO or president of a company, or the commanding officer in a military command. When the person at the top is genuinely invested, allocating resources, reinforcing standards, engaging the team, and making clear that safety is never negotiable, that tone permeates the entire operation. People watch what leadership does far more closely than they listen to what leadership says. But safety advocacy doesn't require the corner office. A charter company's director of safety with credibility and access, a senior pilot whose example sets the standard on every leg, or a squadron safety officer who has the trust of the crew and a clear line to front office leadership. These voices matter, and in many organizations, they are the ones that can actually sustain the safety culture when formal leadership needs to catch up. The safety advocate role can be filled at any level, but the goal over time is to move advocacy upward, to get the accountable executive, the president, the commanding officer, genuinely invested and visibly engaged. If advocacy lives only in the safety department, it will have limits over time. When it lives at the top, it will have universal reach. It is the first essential condition, the opening of a loop that only closes when the entire organization commits to the same standard. Condition 2. Open safety reporting. An organization cannot manage risk it doesn't know about. The information that drives safety risk management, safety assurance, and continuous improvement doesn't come from audits alone. It comes from the people doing the work. Pilots, mechanics, dispatchers, line crew. The people closest to the operation see things no audit will catch. But that information only reaches the system if there is a clear, accessible path for it to do so. Open safety reporting is that path. It means every member of the organization has a direct line to safety stakeholders, and those stakeholders have a clear line to leadership. The system works in both directions. Information flows up from the operation. Feedback flows back down. That two-way movement is what keeps the reporting culture alive. Anonymous reporting capability is a critical part of that design. It ensures that people who have something to report always have a way to do it, regardless of circumstance. That capability alone will surface information that would otherwise never enter the system. When reporting is open and consistent, it becomes the raw material for everything else. Hazard identification, risk analysis, corrective action, safety performance tracking. Every downstream process in the SMS depends on the quality and volume of what gets reported. Without it, the system is making decisions with an incomplete picture, and incomplete pictures lead to unmanaged risk. Open safety reporting is the pipeline. Everything else depends on what flows through it. Condition 3. Learning-oriented accountability. How an organization responds to mistakes determines whether people report them. In a traditional punitive environment, the response to a mistake is to find who's responsible and apply consequences. That can feel decisive and divisive to a workforce. It also may increase the likelihood that the next person who makes a mistake won't report it. Learning-oriented accountability starts with a different approach. It seeks to learn not who made the mistake, but what in the system allowed it to happen. A pilot reports an unstabilized approach. Instead of immediate discipline, the organization asks, was this a training gap, a fatigue issue, an unclear procedure? If the investigation finds a system failure, the system gets fixed and the pilot who reported it gets feedback. The operation improves. That is learning-oriented accountability working as designed, and it is the practical expression of what's known as a just safety culture. A just safety culture is not a blame-free culture. The word just means fair, not forgiving. It means the response to any safety event is proportional, consistent, and focused on learning rather than punishment as the default. People are not protected from consequences. They are protected from unfair consequences. And that distinction is what keeps information flowing into the safety system. But the learning orientation does not mean the absence of accountability. Certain behaviors cannot be overlooked. Reckless behavior, willful violations of safety policies or procedures, falsification of safety reports, intentional non-compliance with regulations. These are not merely mistakes, these are active choices, and they must be treated accordingly. The line between honest error and deliberate violation must be drawn clearly and applied consistently. When people trust that the line is fair, they use the reporting system. When they don't, they go quiet. And a quiet operation is not a safe one. Condition 4. Procedural discipline. Procedures are not merely guidelines. They are risk controls. Every checklist, every standard operating procedure, and every published limit exists because a risk was identified and a control was designed to manage it. When controls are followed consistently, they will work. When they aren't, then the risk they were designed to manage is no longer being managed. The failure pattern in this condition is almost always the same. It rarely starts with a dramatic violation. It starts small. A checklist is rushed or compressed because the crew is busy. An unstabilized approach is continued because the weather looks fine, or a maintenance deferral is stretched a little longer than it should be. Nothing goes wrong at first, so it happens again and again. Over time, the deviation becomes routine. It becomes the way things are actually done, regardless of what any manual or regulation says. Researchers call this normalization of deviance. Standards don't collapse overnight. They erode, often gradually and quietly, one accepted shortcut at a time. By the time the deviation is visible, it has often been the operating norm for months. Procedural discipline means the standard holds every time, not just when conditions are ideal and not just when someone is watching. The checklist is adhered to, the approach gets stabilized, the limit gets respected. This should occur on every leg, during every maintenance cycle or inspection, every time. The gap between what the manual says and what the operation actually does is where unmanaged risk lives. Procedural discipline works to close that gap. Condition 5. Organizational commitment. When the first 4 conditions are functioning, when there is a safety advocate setting the tone, an open reporting system people trust, a fair accountability framework, and standards that hold, something emerges across the operation. The organization commits. Organizational commitment is not something an organization decides to have. It is what develops when the other 4 conditions are effective. A mechanic writes up a squawk that might delay a flight, because they trust it will be taken seriously. A dispatcher pushes back on a release over a weather concern and gets a real response. A captain raises a maintenance issue during pre-flight, and it gets addressed, not worked around. Those behaviors don't happen by mandate. They happen because people have seen the system work. They have seen that safety concerns get responses. They have seen standards hold under pressure, and they have seen mistakes treated fairly. And so they engage, fully and across every function and every level of the operation. When commitment is absent, the organization fragments. Maintenance sees recurring issues but doesn't surface them. Pilots will adapt around known but unaddressed problems. Dispatch manages the schedule. Leadership monitors the metrics. Each group stays in its lane, and no one is looking at the complete picture. But when these essential conditions exist, the aperture for hazard identification widens and comes into sharper focus. More people are looking. More information enters the system. Risk that would have gone unnoticed in a siloed operation gets surfaced and addressed. When organizational commitment exists, the loop closes. Safety advocacy opens the framework, and a committed organization is what answers it. An SMS is built on 4 pillars: safety policy, safety risk management, safety assurance, and safety promotion. The regulation defines them. The manual describes them. The technology platforms track them. But none of it functions without the culture underneath. 5 essential conditions determine whether that culture is real or just documented. Safety advocacy, a voice that sets the standard and backs it up through every decision, especially the hard ones. Open safety reporting, a clear, trusted path for information to move from the people doing the work into the system designed to act on it. Learning-oriented accountability, a fair and consistent response to mistakes that keeps people engaged and the reporting system alive. Procedural discipline, standards that hold on every leg, in every maintenance cycle, every time. And organizational commitment, not a decision, but an outcome. What emerges when the other 4 conditions are doing their work? Safety advocacy opens the loop, and organizational commitment closes it. Everything in between is what makes the system real. These conditions are not built through policy updates or training programs. They are built through behavior, demonstrated consistently at every level over time. When they exist, the SMS functions the way it was designed to. When they don't, it erodes, quietly, gradually, and often invisibly. An SMS without these conditions is just an administrative exercise. With them, it is a living and effective system.